All right. Welcome to the Scotch Money Podcast, where we're investing our money so that we can afford scotch.
Cheers.
Cheers. All right. So, my name is Dmitry Shabadarev. With me, there's Hunter Slay and Brian Arandez. Say hi, boys.
Hey, man.
Hi, boys.
Hi, boy.
All right. So, today we're talking about risk management in all of the investments that we do. And so, well, say a couple of lines about what you think, and let's just jump into it like we always do.
You want to go first? This is a risky proposition.
It's a risky proposition. Well, why don't we go Hunter then Brian?
I'm curious if the most risk-averse one would talk last. I haven't compared Brian and I's risk-averse rating, but I don't know which of us is more conservative or not. But yeah, I'm curious how that applies to just social situations as well.
Well, one of the things that we were talking about the other day was we were talking about how we're all buying real estate, and we buy real estate in all equity. And a lot of people, at least to me, say, Dmitry, you're crazy. Why would you do it? Why are you buying the real estate in all equity? Why not taking the debt? These are Italian people, of course, but
Yes.
other people also tell me that. In any case, and it's a risk thing, right? Yeah. If everything's going well, then it doesn't matter if you're taking debt or not. You're using it as a multiplier. But if the economy tanks or something, the way that I look at it is if we own it in all equity, we can reposition it and change it. So the risk is minimized by doing it in all equity, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Well,
that's one thing I think is
there is that you have control. One, when you do it in all equity, you're not at the mercy of the banks. You have less parties that can cause things to fuck up. And when we do invest in real estate, we always take the control. So that reduces the risk even more. A lot of the things that cause people to think that things are risky is mostly emotional and irrational. And we all have these things. It's an emotional labor for us to be able, for us to even do these kinds of investments. And when you identify that it's an emotional labor, it makes it easier because then you realize that not everybody is in this game, and you have very few players, and you have it actually is a lot less risky because you don't have as much competition.
That's true.
And that's why
people think everybody. Please.
That's why I think it's important to discuss, perception of risk, because risk is everywhere. It's whether you perceive it or not, and how well you perceive it. That comes into play. It's not a matter of is something risky or not. Almost everything we do is risky. It's what level of risk do you feel it has for you personally, and I feel like that's why we tend to kind of gravitate towards things that we have previous knowledge in, subject matter, deal flow that we have experience in, and feel like that we kind of know the lay of the land better than a layman would know it, better than just someone getting into the business, because that gives us an advantage, and that upping an advantage decreases a risk.
Yeah, and it's also really important to pick your battles. But in picking your battles, you also have to categorize the playing field. Because, for example, what we're investing in are predominantly real assets. We're not risking money on the stock market. We're not risking money on the currency markets, on the currency exchange markets. It's a physical asset that. When it's a physical asset, it's either the asset will appreciate after you've bought it, or it'll depreciate, or it'll completely disappear. But it's very unlikely for real assets to completely disappear. So if you're buying it when everybody else is pessimistic about its performance, then that's precisely the time to buy it.
There's
Over here
something
in
there.
California, it sucks to buy things because everybody is so optimistic about everything. It's great. It feels like a bubble waiting to burst because everybody's so optimistic. The prices are so high, and the only place for the prices to go is down.
That's true. So let me say this. You know, I like risk, obviously. I mean, I don't like to gamble, but you know, when it comes to taking risks, I've taken lots of risks. You can't get into the position of investing in anything without taking risks.
No risk,
And
no
it's about-
reward.
No risk, no reward. Exactly. You got to risk it to get the biscuit.
Exactly.
Hold on.
But the thing
I
is,
have a
when
point
you're
to make.
risks, would you say that you're taking perceived risks, things that other people would perceive as risky, but you actually see as exciting because you see the potential in it?
I look at it as a matter of control. Can you control the risk? If I go to Vegas and I go to a craps table, I think that's what it's called, craps, right? I'm bad at this. Look, if I go to Vegas and I go and roll the dice and I say all on black, I can't control that. I can't. I physically can't. I mean, if I do, they'll kick me out. And you know, maybe that's not unheard of. But the point is, it's an uncontrollable risk. You can see it, but you can't control it. Investing, yeah, hell yeah, there are risks. That's what it's all about. If you're investing in something that has no risk, well, first of all, everything has risks, so forget about that. But if you can control it, so whether it's real estate, where you know you're trying to get permits or something like that, or if you're rezoning land, or if you're adding value to multifamily, or if you're buying right, it all starts with buying right, right? The reason I don't we're here in California, right? I'm here in Orange County, California. Maybe we should tell everybody where we are, by the way.
I'm currently in Little Rock, Arkansas.
And I'm also in Orange County, California.
Both beautiful places to be.
Oh
yeah.
man,
I heard that, Hunter, you had a very interesting meeting with a particular political individual that I want to talk about. But hold on, let me finish my point, and then we'll jump into that. So the point is, look, if I can control the risk, if I can have a tenant in tow, if I can have a really good acquisition because I've driven the price down compared to the market, and I know that I'm buying in all equity, so if something bad happens, and this is the way I did it, something bad happens, I can reposition the asset, well then yeah, I'm going to be happy. I can sleep at night because I can know that, look, if something goes wrong, all right, it's going to be bad, it's going to suck, I'm not going to be happy about it, but I have the time to fix it. So, if I walk outside right now and some guy punches me in the face, well, that sucks, but life goes on, right? But if I go outside and somebody stabs me in the neck, probably not. So, what would I choose? I'd choose the punch to the face. Also, I'm into that. In any case, Hunter, you met. This is kind of crazy.
They may see what we're doing or you're doing, as super risky. Oh, you're buying this property. You got so much in the property. What happens to the property? But when you know the market the way you do, and you know what the comparables are, and you know what the market has done, and you have good estimation of what the market will do, you can negotiate things like the price and the terms to suit you in a way that you have more control over potential variables in the future, and that gives you security. So where your knowledge is giving you security, lack of knowledge a lot of times is what gives people risk. I find that risk and lack of knowledge go hand in hand a lot, but you can mitigate a lot of risk just with knowledge if you understand all the systems at play, how they interconnect, And that's what leads me to exactly what we were doing with the governor today. We were signing a bill into law that is allowing basically suburban improvement districts to vote on whether they become a city or not. It's putting the power of, into the people for their own area. There was stipulations around the law that was a sweeping law that there had to be a buffer of so many miles. Well, in our case, we're 3 miles away from a city that got incorporated back in the early 1900s, but they have 100 people. And so now this city of 100 people across the river is keeping us from incorporating 3,000 people. And so when we basically talked amongst ourselves in the community, everybody's discussing how the suburban improvement district is funding the roads and the sewer and trash, all these things. The money will eventually run out in a suburban improvement district because you're paying off not a homeowner's fee or homeowners association fee, but something about the equivalent amount. It's your value of benefit, but it's a set amount. And once you pay it off, it's gone. And once all of those things are paid off, the SID doesn't have any money to operate on. So a lot of, the smarter people in the community that are looking further down the road are saying that we're in a model that won't work. So let's come together and figure out a solution to this, and let's get incorporated. And in the process, we've hit a number of different little roadblocks, this being one of them. But we've taken them all down because the desire of the people in the area is to preserve the value of their homes, keep the area clean, well-maintained, roads, sewage included. So it's in everybody's best interest to actually get involved a little politically so that we can be able to take what action we need to do to mitigate the risk going forward.
So let me comment on that one. And then I think, because I know that Brian...
I'd like to comment on that one as well.
Yeah. Well, so the very quick case, I suppose, is, look, we all have political relationships. We all care about politics. We're watching what's happening on the federal level. We're watching what's happening on a local level. And there are different levels of that touch real estate, like what you're talking about. They touch venture capital. They touch all the way up to the federal side. So it's foolish to not know your local politicians. Well, whether you're investing or not, it doesn't matter. If you don't know your local politicians, then how can you possibly influence your local community? And then if you're investing somewhere, let's say, like I've invested a lot in Vegas, I know all those politicians. We're investing in Massachusetts, know all those politicians, etc. You have a place out in Arkansas, because you knew your local guys and you were participating, having nothing to do with investing besides your own property value that you own, you met with the governor today. I mean, that's a big deal.
I feel like politics and weather are equally consistent risk factors in every deal. It's almost nothing is immune to those two things. And some would argue they're equally as difficult to predict. But like Dimitri was saying earlier, I like at least trying to exert control where I can exert control in as many areas as possible to limit that risk. So that's why I take it upon myself to get involved. The citizens actually were wanting to get a group together of volunteers. We've formed an organization called HYPRO, which is Holiday Islanders Promoting Residential Ownership, to actually drum up money to market Holiday Island to people, because the city itself doesn't have a budget to do so. And I say city, but it's really a SID. They don't have enough budget. And it's not because there's a lack of people or funding. In this particular situation, some of the residents 20-something years ago sued the old Board of Commissioners about spending money on vacations instead of the community. And as a result, the penalty was that since they classified those expenditures as marketing expenses, we're going to other cities to talk about our city. So the judge said, okay, well, cool. We're going to limit your expenditure in the budget on marketing to $2,000 or 20, I can't remember the amount that it was, but it comes out to 2%. So 2% of the SID's budget is allowed to be spent on marketing, and that is it. that pays for a good couple ads in 2 or 3 magazines. I mean, it's nothing, and the city as a result has been slowly going down in value because it's not known about. It's hidden, and it's started from a retirement community. So you have a lot of people dying out. Their kids don't have any attachment to the home; they just dump it. That creates comps that other people point to when they want to lowball somebody else, and they dump it. And before you know it, I mean, if we're not able to afford the golf course and that turns into a field, now we're just houses out in the middle of nowhere. We're not we're not a resort community without the tennis courts and the amenities, the swimming pool and volleyball and all this. Like,
Well,
can't
so
just,
I'm interested in hearing what Brian has to say about politics and real estate or venture or whatever. We all invest in a lot of stuff, not just real estate.
But what this makes me think about, especially in your case, Hunter, is for people in general, there's this huge disparity with what feels scary and what actually is scary, what actually is risky. And going to a governor and speaking to him, speaking to authority in general, feels very scary. So people would consider that a risk, just because of the emotional effort that you have to put into it. But it actually de-risks your situation because you're creating relationships with people who can actually, give you inputs on what's going on around you, on what you don't know. Because
Mm-hmm.
it's so easy for us to get caught up in what we know and what we know we don't know. But there's this huge blind spot on the things that we don't know that we don't know. And creating these relationships with the government really help out. Um, I mean, we were speaking to government officials on one of the recent races that we were doing, and just being able to pick up the phone and say, hey, what's going on, just really, really helps, one, with my peace of mind, because at least I know what's causing the delays and I know that the delays aren't caused by me. There's such complexity in government that I have no control of. And it's nice to just pick up the phone and know what I don't have control of, so I don't have to have to worry about it. Oh, the government is taking care of it. It's going to happen, or it may happen, but at least I know what I don't have control of, so I can focus on the things I actually do have control of.
So you're talking about planning department stuff, which the planning department. So the way that I look at it, and some say that I dabble a little too much in politics, but I like it, and as a young person, I feel like it's my duty to do so. But um, I've found that the lower you are in politics, the less BS there is. So, like when you're talking to planning department, when you're talking to city councils, it depends. Like if you're in Los Angeles, then obviously city councils are going to be a little bit more, uh, corrupt, for lack of a better term. I don't know. Am I going to piss off people in LA? Fine, screw it. We won't do development in LA. It's no, but the point is, like, if you're at the lower levels, the local levels, the community levels, look, if I go out to Newport Beach and I start talking to those council members, guess what? I know them. Why? Because we're in Newport Beach. I go to the gym in Newport Beach. We know all of the big developers in Newport Beach. Like you build a sense of community because you're there. Same thing with Hunter with what he's talking about in Arkansas because of the state that he has there. But the point is, once you go up to the federal level, it's all BS. But it's still important to develop those relationships because things still need to get done, and somebody needs to be there to tell them what needs to get done because they don't know. How the hell are they going to know? There's too much, especially on that level. And then two, it's not about controlling them. I mean, this isn't a 1950s movie. It's about sharing with them the knowledge that you have that they don't. It's the human condition. It's part of the human condition. Sharing knowledge with each other and trying to create something bigger. And in legislation, that's how you do it. So like when Hunter goes and talks to a governor and says, hey, we need the ability to be able to incorporate our city because otherwise we're losing our property values. Well, that's a personal problem to Hunter. The governor didn't know about that until they went out and did that. That's important.
That's the crazy part. That's why I'm actually met with the governor today, is because we reached out to our local representative and our senator, the people that are from that area, that care about that area, that are more involved and in touch with that area, just like you're saying, not as separated, not as busy, not as inundated with multiple relationships. So we go to those guys that are supposed to be our champions and say, hey, look, this is what's going on in our area. Can you help us with this? And through our support of giving them the information and their support of fighting the fight for us in the committees and on the floor, we got the bill signed into law. And that's what we were meeting with the governor today, was the governor was signing the bill into law. So we were just meeting with him to do the pose behind the back as he's signing the thing, So
you're shaking hands, kissing babies.
Exactly. It's funny, he mentioned, he said, am I shaking hands with the future mayor then? Because if we get incorporated, we'll have to elect a mayor. We'll have to elect a city council. And it will probably be somebody in our small little group of guys that have been working on the incorporation. And so I was like, well, for all we know, we're shaking hands with the future president, because Bill Clinton was the former governor of Arkansas. You see where he ended up. So, it was funny. Today there was a potential handshake between a future president and a future mayor. But
question for you. Are you going to be that future mayor? Are you going to throw your hat in the race?
I do not want the responsibilities of that office, especially the first mayor of the city. That will be a position inundated with complaining and conflict and growing pains, transition pains that I just do not want to be, quote, responsible for. I would like to help with, but I don't want to be responsible for them to the people, because they have a lot of expectation once you're in an official position to deliver what they want, not necessarily what's best for the community. They think they know what's best for the community, and it's really just what they want. So unless you give them what they want, then you're not good for the community.
So therein lies a point that I was just making, and I know for a fact, because we've had lots of conversations, Brian, about this. Look, everybody wants something, right? Everybody wants something. So you put out, like, if you don't ask, you shall not receive, right? If you don't ask, you won't get anything. So you have to ask, especially in a situation like that. You have to be able to request what you want. If you're being an a-hole and you know that it's bad for the community, or you know that it's bad for everybody, but you're like, it's good for me, so screw you, well then, yeah, screw you, actually. But if it's one of those things in between the black and the white, if it's in that gray area, you got to talk about it. Brian, I know you're itching to jump in on this.
On the political side, no, you guys are the political masters. One is the future mayor of Arkansas in
Future mayor of
his little city in Arkansas.
I eventually would entertain the idea, but just not right away. I want to be aggressively doing things other places as well, and it seems like that's an all hands on deck job. Like if I go into that, I need to be here every day, giving all of my free time to it. I mean, it just seems like it's a consuming.
Could you let our listeners know what city you live in? Because it's beautiful when you Google it.
Oh, the city that I am trying to make a city is Holiday Island, but the nearest city that is officially a city is Eureka Springs, and Eureka Springs has more character per square inch than almost any place I've seen in the world. It's very small, but
you got a place there.
It's really cool. Yeah, it's growing really fast. We're within 30 miles of what is I think it's the third or second fastest growing place in the United States right now. And that's, Bentonville, Fayetteville, Rogers area of Arkansas. And that's due to the Waltons and Walmart.
Top 1% of the 1%.
Exactly. But they're doing really good things for the state. And what's really impressed me with them is that they have given back to their roots. A lot of states complain about bright flight. The best and brightest take off as soon as they can. They seek
Brain
opportunity to go elsewhere. But it's cool to see someone with such ability to go other places and do anything they want say, I'm going to focus my efforts here, helping my community, my state, my city. And they're really engaged with the youth. They are building tons of biking trails, which is good for the health in the area. They're very long-term minded, which I like about them a lot. They're trying to preserve art and nature, education, cultural things.
Yeah.
So a lot of people badmouth, Walmart. Oh, but if you actually talk to them and see what they're about, it's a shame that they don't get the publicity for the things they do in good scenarios that they get for some of the things that could be frowned upon if looked at from this certain angle. Because in a lot of the disaster relief areas, did you know that the Walmart Corporation full-time employs a meteorological team to track the weather in the entire country, and any severe weather damage or anything that comes up, they're already sending hundreds and thousands of gallons of water, toilet paper, every kind of relief supply you could imagine. And they don't publicize any of that. They don't take any credit for that. They donate millions and millions and millions of dollars to helping people in our country that are in natural disasters without ever saying a word about it.
So listen to this. Like, I've been reading a lot about, and I have so many questions going through my mind that, we don't want to be drowning out everybody in too much stuff. I guess we'll do a couple more of these. But it makes me think. I've been reading a lot. Like, I don't really do the whole social media thing, and I guess, I should, whatever, we live in the 21st century. But I'm reading on Reddit because I like to go on Reddit that all these rich people, I can't believe, everyone's hating on the rich. And don't get me wrong, I have my own gripes, right? I didn't come from a very wealthy family. I had to work my way up. And I worked my ass off for it and continue to do so. But nobody talks about the good things that people do. Nobody talks about all of the charitable stuff. So people who don't understand what it takes to get to a place where you have significant wealth, those are the people that they go, oh, well, you have so much and I have so little. Why don't you give me some of what you have because you've worked your ass off for it, but I don't care. Nobody knows what it takes. The risk. So going back to risk, right? Every day you're working a lot more than anybody else, and you're not getting paid. You're taking a risk to create something. And like Walmart is a crazy example of it because they went from this to this.
Yeah, dime store.
We have to categorize that though, because a lot of the work that you do, a lot of the work that you do is emotionally risky. It's hard to get up in the morning and prepare yourself to do the kind of things that you have to do every single day. Whereas a lot of people would say that they work harder than you because they do the exact same thing and toil for 16 hours a day, 7 days a week, doing very difficult, repetitive things. And that's also a form of working hard. It's not necessarily, it's the kind of hard work that you choose to do. And the thing is, you've put yourself in a position that allows you to choose what kind of hard work you do. And, the classification of how, the difficulty. It's not necessarily physically hard, and it's not always mentally difficult, but it's almost always emotionally difficult. And that's the value in it, because it almost all of the work you do feels risky to almost everybody else. It constantly feels risky, but it's just the perception of that risk, because everything that you every single day is to de-risk with your current situation.
This makes me think of an anecdote. And I want to tell this anecdote because it's, I think in anecdotes because I'm a foreigner. Foreign enough.
You like
I grew
us,
up here.
antidote like us.
Let me tell you anecdote. Very cool anecdote. So, very legal, very cool. Sorry, okay. So, you guys are babysitting your scotches. Drink up. Okay, so anecdote. We were buying a building in 2000, end of 2016 to mid 2017. And I'm not going to talk a lot about the details of it, but it was an industrial building. We were buying it, and part of it was putting together the money. And putting together the money is not fun, and it's not easy. And I've done it for far too long that I feel like I have Stockholm syndrome. But I'm like, it's, I just do it somehow. I don't know how.
Your job and you've fallen in love with your captor.
Come back. All right. There was another guy, and you meet people and you develop friendships, and then you start saying, well, let's do business together. And this happens every day. It should, at least. You should meet people every day because it's all about social networks. It's all about socialism. I just can't. Wrong one. So he was also doing something kind of similar at the time. And he did, I'm not going to name any names because he's a cool dude. And I still know him actually. And so he was doing that. He was trying to put together, right? And it just wasn't working out. And mine at that time wasn't really working out too well. It was difficult. But here's the difference. I bought a building. His building he didn't buy. And he actually was one of the guys that helped make this very nice suit jacket. So the point of the matter is he quit and started doing something else. And maybe that something else worked for him. But I feel like he probably would have wanted to succeed at what he was doing. And he didn't because he didn't stick to it. And yes, there's emotional risk, stress. I used to load boxes for a living when I was, a kid. But it boils down to if you don't give up, you will inevitably succeed. You can't not. Statistically, it's impossible. At some point, you will succeed, even if it's just you're stumbling and hitting your head and you're like Charlie Chaplin. You're stumbling around and then somehow you end up with everything.
That's one of the things I like most about you, Dimitri, and that's one of the things that drew me to you in the first place, is you're a rocket ship. You're like literally on fire, exploding into the atmosphere, like at all times. You're a projectile. I've never seen anything like it. You mentioned very coyly, I used to load boxes when I was younger, but let me elaborate on that. This man loaded heavy boxes for UPS. Like major
pack. Are we allowed to say brands?
And he didn't do it just to do it. He put on weight belts. He would add weights to himself.
I didn't know about that.
Over 50 pounds to his body and still outperform every single person there. Like
so it was actually a weight vest.
You do it for the golden abs.
I was chasing the dream of abs. I'll tell you this. I worked much harder back then in the middle of the night loading boxes, wearing that 80-pound weight vest, which I still have and never put on ever. But yes, I was in much better shape back then. Not that I'm in bad shape now, but you can imagine.
I mean, that just shows your level of can-do attitude. Most people would take a box shipping job and just do the bare minimum. They're just like, okay, what boxes need to go where? Yeah, and reluctantly do it with a begrudging overtone, Yeah,
you can't just say that you can't not succeed because your classification of that is different. Your classification is you're taking risks and you're stumbling and you're getting up and you're going again. Whereas somebody else who just keeps on going, but loads boxes for the rest of his life,
Oh,
that's a completely different kind of success. He's gonna get successful at loading boxes for the rest of his life.
but it's about the stick-to-itiveness. If
The-
you
the-
stick to loading boxes, you will
You
get
will-
really good at loading boxes.
something. Yeah, something. But you gotta try to achieve anything.
Here's the way I look at it. In a nutshell, if you want to buy $100 million buildings, you can't do it from, I mean, unless you were born into a trust fund, which I wasn't. So I can't comment. And I know that you guys weren't. I mean, unless you were, at which point tell me. No, but the point is, if you want to get to that point, you know that you can't start right there. You start earlier. If you are of average intelligence, you can deduce that, right? Nobody ran a marathon the first day. It's about starting and then continuing. What I mean when I say you got to take the risk to start, going back to the whole point of this risk, but then it's sticking to it. You can freak out. And if you freak out, like some people do, then you're going to stop. You're going to, like, for example, taking it to a current example, I've been working out recently and I'm not losing weight as fast as I want to. I want to get spectacular, delicious abs that I can cook eggs on in the morning because they're so hot and spicy. But do not have those sweet, sweet abs yet. But I'm working on it every day. And even though I don't have them, and even though I'm technically gaining weight, which pisses me off to no end, I still go every single day, 7 days a week. And I do that because Brian and I are in a competition on our Apple Watches and he does it. And so I'm like, screw you, I'm doing this.
But it's also about creating your environment, right? Because we've created that environment where you know what drives you. You know that just a little bit of social pressure is enough to get you to get up off your ass and work out. And I wouldn't have jogged with my dog, even though he was barking with me, barking at me, incessantly wanting to
This
walk
morning,
this morning, if it wasn't for you. So you're making my dogs happier because they get their walks, because I have to log it. Otherwise, I'll lose.
yes, you will. Because I walked 5 miles last night. I didn't want to walk that 5 miles, but I did. And I tried to get ahead, and I did not get it.
I feel like I need to be in this. I would like to. I'd like to participate.
You got to jump. It's the latest craze.
It's the latest craze. But speaking about risk, for example, the first time I invested in real estate, it was 2010, and we bought 4 properties in Japan. And the advice to us, which fortunately we followed, was pick properties in areas that you don't want to live in, and the properties themselves are properties that you don't want to live in. And we were buying these for rental properties. We were buying them for investment. But they have incredibly high ROIs. The numbers spoke for themselves. But they looked very risky to us because, oh my God, we don't want to live in that area. It's like it's a crappy area. We don't want to live in that apartment. It's a crappy apartment. But it had incredibly high ROIs for a long amount of time, and it wasn't moving because it was shitty. But up until now, when the ROIs for apartments in Japan are now 4 and 5%, our apartments are still 8 to 12% after 9 years. And it's because we took somebody's advice to pick something that we felt was risky, but wasn't actually risky.
Because they had the knowledge to know what factors would be a possibility. I was looking up risk statistics recently, and I got into a lot of links on statistical risk analysis. And that's what I found was very interesting, how everything's in relative risk is a big factor in determining risk. Because like we were talking about earlier, there's almost nothing that's devoid of risk. So at any time assessing your risk, you're really determining a ratio, like how many things can go wrong, how probable are those things to go wrong. And the way to avoid a lot of that is by doing exactly what Brian was talking about, reaching out to someone that knows the area, knows the business, knows the land basically, and getting their expertise to take out a lot of those variables. Because even though it seems to like a variable to someone that doesn't know Japan, someone that intimate knowledge of Japanese real estate market will tell you, hey, I know the figures, I know the market, I know the trends, I know the people, and that helps a lot of time to.
Let me ask you this, Brian. How well did you know the person who gave you that recommendation?
Not very well.
But you knew he was an expert.
I met him for like the second time, but
That's risky.
He was in the same industry as me. He was very data oriented. He was kind of a data whore. He collected a giant amount of data, showed me the data, and gave me advice based on the data. And we've been using it to profile apartments from that time forward, at least in Japan.
Yeah. So
it looks like a shitty deal. There might be something there.
The data does not lie. Back in, well, to not get too in depth, right now, if I wanted to go and buy something here in California, which, look, would I love to buy properties here in California? Of course. Have I? Yes, we've bought properties here in California. Would I do it now? No. And people ask me about it. I'm not going to buy properties in California because it's too much. It costs too much. When I do the numbers, when I put together an analysis and I put all the data points in, it doesn't work. And so then I can try to make it work. But then Michael, our CFO, is going to say, what are you doing? And I'm going to say, I don't know. So look, all jokes aside, it's just a matter of numbers. The data doesn't lie. Now, you can never predict when there's going to be a crash. There are known knowns, there are known unknowns, and then there are unknown unknowns. You can control two. And then your structure, your fallback, is where the last one is. If you plan everything right and everything's so great, but then things still go poorly, you're going to fall back on your structure, which brings us back to what we started with. If you buy things with debt and things go wrong, you fall back on your structure, but your structure isn't stable, and so you're screwed.
Yeah.
I happen to.
That's the opposite scenario of what we've been speaking about. Debt doesn't feel risky. It feels less risky, but it's actually the most risky.
In America. In Japan, if I'm speaking correctly, and you can correct me, do they not use mostly equity or all equity?
Yes, I had to carry, and they use cash. So I had to carry briefcases full of cash to purchase the property.
That's not rich at all.
Don't do that here in the U.S.
No, they only use cash there. It's stupid.
That is crazy.
But recently it's changed, but yeah, it's a very cash heavy society.
Wow.
They like those Benjamins. They like their Scotch and they like their money. Scotch money. Patent pending.
Yes. Oh man, it's funny. We've mentioned a couple times, what you know, what you don't know, and what you don't know, you don't know. But there's actually this ghost category that hangs out with those, and it's actually the most dangerous in my opinion, and that is what you think you know, but you're wrong. That's the deadly one, and he's a lurker.
Can I comment on that one? And
Absolutely.
You guys know that every once in a while I let my ego go crazy. No, I'm just kidding. Look, when I was younger,
all
especially all the time. Well, especially if I've had a few of these in me. No, but all jokes aside, look, when it's something unimportant, you can have that pride and that ego, and sometimes you're like, I'm awesome and you're not awesome, or you're awesome, but I'm awesomer. I'm awesome-o. But taking it seriously, when it comes to business, serious business, financial business, or even emotional business, whatever you consider to be serious, and I consider finances to be extremely serious, obviously. You have to be able to step back, and I frequently do, and listen to the smart people around you, and then digest that information, even if it goes against your grain, which frequently it does. And you have to be able to say, am I doing this because of ego, or am I doing this because it's a good thing to do?
Yeah.
And sometimes you got to step back.
I generally
That takes
feel
power.
that it's important to distrust your own humanness. Because there's a lot of times where, one, you get emotional and get afraid. Two, you think you know something, but you don't really know something. But you're not listening to people around you because you think you know it. There's lots of situations where you should be distrusting yourself, but you aren't. And it takes practice to distrust yourself, because you're not. Who tells their child growing up you should distrust everything your mind tells you? But that's literally what we have to do, because this thing in our heads plays tricks on us all the time. Like, for example, Dimitri, you keep on saying that you like taking risks and you take more risks than anybody else, but you're incredibly risk averse. It's just that you just take risks that feel risky, and it sounds so cool to say you take risks, because everybody else would classify what you do as risky. It's just that you have, you're it's like you're walking on water, but you're actually walking on an island that's just beneath the waves. So you look like you're walking on water, but you actually aren't. You have no risk.
I will say this. Besides, I'm walking on sunshine. Oh, oh, oh. All right,
Walking
no.
on sandbars.
Yeah. Is this microphone working? All right, no. It's about balance, because one side, if you think of a scale, one side says, don't do this because it's too risky. And then the other side says, do this because you love doing it, or it seems really good. Just do it, do it, do it, do it. If you're not in balance, it's bad. Finding balance and being able to both. A friend of mine once told me, and I haven't had too many mentors in my business career, and I've always been open to it. And occasionally I will hear good pieces of advice from folks that are more experienced, and that's a good thing. But I haven't had a consistent mentor. But I will say this: inaction is just as bad as too much action. Because, and here's my personal philosophy: Einstein, the name Einstein is associated with intelligence. If I say you're a real Einstein, you're going to say, oh, I'm so smart, right? Well,
Wait, which one? Yeah.
which one are you talking
Which
about?
Einstein are you?
The point is, Einstein was very smart, but if he didn't leave his house, if he sat on his ass in his room going, oh, look at how smart I am, nobody would care. And nobody would have ever even remembered him. People remember him because he was both out there, he was smart, he was out there, and he was doing things, doing. And I guarantee you, I mean, I'm not the foremost Einstein expert, but I guarantee you he failed. And he failed and he failed and he failed and he failed until he started succeeding. And then the success begets success begets success. I understand it from personal experience. There's risk, but then you take risks. But then once you're in, you're taking less risks, and the structure is not risky. The actions are risky, but the structure isn't risky. It's a balance. Emperor Nero told me that one. Look it up.
And it's
Look it up,
funny.
Emperor Nero.
It's funny that you mentioned Einstein too, because when someone says, "Oh, you're an Einstein," people have an equation in their head. Einstein is synonymous with intelligence, but when asked actually about his methods, Einstein was really quick to tell people, "I'm not smarter than anyone else." When in fact he actually was, but he said, I'm not so much smarter than everyone else. It's just I choose to linger on the problems that other people give up on or dismiss. He didn't come to any of his equations by a eureka light bulb moment. He never meditated and got a vision. He tried on a chalkboard, that didn't work. He tried another one, it didn't work. Tried another one and tried another one and tried another one. He failed countless times, but he kept going. And that's what made Einstein successful. And it gave me a lot of inspiration as a younger person growing up when I found this out, because I was like, oh, so I can accomplish what Einstein did with persistence. I don't have to be the super brain. I have a decent brain. I know that. And that apparently, coupled with persistence, can do anything, can define the entire world we live in.
There's an interesting piece to that, and Dimitri touched on it earlier on. But what actually helps you create that balance between, doing something that's risky and doing something that you want? Like how do you balance that? Oh, I want to do this versus it's risky. Like Einstein could have just kept on going on the wrong path, and he would never have developed the things that he developed. He probably knew when to quit on one equation and start on another.
I have an answer for that. So, Einstein's most famous equation is E equals mc squared, yes?
Mm-hmm.
Well, as we all know, c equals the speed of light, right? Duh. It's like the most obvious thing ever. Where have you been?
The famous equation should probably be happy wife equals happy life.
No.
She was incremental in a lot of his stuff, and she helped out a lot.
That's true. Didn't he marry his cousin or something? Yeah. In any case, point of the matter is, besides Einstein being a cousin lover, very smart guy, except for there, obviously. You can't be perfect.
That reminds me of a saying.
Squared isn't an original equation. I may be talking out of my ass, and we should check this. And in fact, after this, I'm going to check it. C before Einstein's equation was v, velocity. So he was comparing velocity in the equation. So every scientist, doesn't matter who you are, doesn't matter what your ology is, as in, it doesn't matter if you're
area of expertise.
Yeah. It doesn't matter what your area of expertise is. The Scotch is getting to me, as you can tell. Point is, it doesn't matter what your area of expertise or your area of study is. You're building on the research of other people in the past.
Yeah.
Nobody starts from scratch. You don't need to reinvent the wheel.
And on that light, for example, and my high school teacher derived how he got E equals mc squared. It's a distillation of other people's knowledge. He took this long equation, went through the equation with his own assumptions, plugged it in, and came to that very, very elegant short thing. But there's a lot of complexity underneath the surface. The reason why it's so concise is because of all the thinking that went into it. Whenever we see anything that's well designed, that's very clean, that feels and looks so obvious, why didn't I think about that before? It's precisely because there's somebody who put a lot of thought into it, that took a lot of complexity and distilled it down to its essence. And a lot of people have difficulty with complexity because they give up early. So all you have to do is take something that's not necessarily inherently complex, but just it looks complex. It's apparent chaos, but not actual chaos. And you take that chaos and you distill what's rational, what its actual essence is. A lot of people I'm a bit weird. I was in Japan during the big earthquake with the tsunami and stuff, and I was on the top of a high rise in the middle of Tokyo, and the building was doing this. It was like a twin tower type of thing, and it was doing this, and everybody else was freaking out, and I was having the time of my life. It was just, if I don't die, this would be fantastic.
Yeah.
I revel in apparent chaos. But the thing is, like when you can't control anything else about your situation, find the one thing that you can control and then focus on that. Because everybody else is focused on things that they can't control. And because of that, they're panicking. But the one thing I can do is one, move with the flow and kind of like be happy with it, because when I can move with the flow and when I can move with the vibrations, I can move myself to safety without freaking out like everybody else. If I'm happy through it, then I'll be safer through it.
Oh yeah, I imagine the people that built the building probably knew there was another 50-mile-an-hour of wind that could happen and another 100 and something feet of water before it would be structurally challenged. So those guys would probably tell you real quick, like, hey, I know it feels funny, but you're perfectly safe.
Yeah.
They would be worried.
Man.
But that goes back to what we were talking about earlier. Knowledge is kryptonite to risk. Knowledge and control are both kryptonite when it comes to risk.
It destroys the perceived risk and leaves behind the actual risk.
Yes.
So you've cleaned up the playing field. Everybody else will be afraid of the whole field because they think the whole field is risky. But then when you apply data to it, it clears a path. And you're walking on that path and nobody else sees the path because they've generalized the situation. They've created a story where the whole thing is risky. But applying data to it creates that path you can walk in. And it's actually less risky because nobody else will follow you.
So interestingly enough, aside from real estate, we're investing in venture capital stuff as well, investing in companies, earlier stage companies, which are perceived as riskier. And there's a lot of stuff that I could talk about there, and I'm happy to do so if you guys want to jump into it. That being said, I took some time to talk to some of my, bigger, somewhat more successful developer friends about the venture stuff that I've been doing and about the control and about the relationships and all that stuff, the mitigation of the risk. And they didn't care. Why didn't they care? Well, because it doesn't matter how much money you have. A lot of times, even the most wealthy people are scared of the unknown. I have learned to embrace the unknown as an opportunity to learn, and that's my personal mantra. I'll jump into the unknown and let's learn something. That's why I'll play piano even though I didn't play piano a year ago. I'll play guitar even though you jump into the unknown and you're like, teach me. I want control, and I'll maintain that control through my relationships and my social situation. But I don't know everything. Nobody knows everything. And so the things that I'm interested in that can add value, whether it's to me personally or to my business, yeah. And by the way, learning instruments, I'm gonna plug learning instruments right now. To anybody who cares to listen this far into this thing, that expands your mind. And it expands the way you think and the way that you analyze problems. The more instruments you know, the better. Or languages.
Sure.
And by the way, I'm going to take a quick break. You guys continue. I'm going to go to the restroom. Scotch.
Well, while he's not here, and I'm not going to be inflating his ego, what really impresses me about him is that he's not afraid to look stupid in public. If he's in the process of learning something, he doesn't. He just goes. and he's not afraid of looking like a fool, or he's not afraid of, and he doesn't even puff himself up to the degree where he's blind to the criticism, because he's looking for exactly that.
Yeah, yeah, he's definitely open, and I feel like, yeah, that's definitely one of his strong suits as well. I feel like a lot of times the reason people don't actually end up going as far as they would like in something or becoming a master of something is because they're trying to appear to be a master from the get-go. And in order to keep up that appearance, they can't ask the questions they need to ask, which may appear like stupid questions to the masters, but to someone actually learning, it's a very legitimate question. But they won't allow themselves to ask those questions because they are afraid they will look stupid, because based on the facade that they've already put on, that they are this expert or this master or this person in this subject, then they would undo that facade if they were to ask this question. So a lot of times they end up never accomplishing or achieving what they're trying to pretend to be, because they're trying to uphold the pretending.
Yeah. I used to be that way, by the way.
That is super sad.
Back to our topic, it's just the perceived risk, because a lot of the things that we perceive as risk is social risk or emotional risk, or very, very human things, and that's exactly what's so lucrative to go for, because when nobody else wants to do it because it feels scary, once you see a path through it, that's exactly where you should go.
Yeah, one of the leading investment advisors in Stansberry Research Institute, Steve Sugarrood, one of his main investing acumen is buy what's hated. And that's what he's talking about. He's like, when everybody else is running and everybody else thinks it's crap, that's when your buying opportunity is.
Well,
but
so
there's an exception to that, and so if we're talking about actual assets, real estates, things that won't disappear from underneath, unless there's an earthquake or a flood, that's true. But for example, I've made a lot of mistakes as well on purchasing technology. For example, I used to run a 3D printing company, and one of the machines that we invested heavily on was a full color powder 3D printing machine, because the largest player in the market was investing heavily in that space. We were investing in old technology, purchasing a lot of giant machines, and learning a lot of things, wasting a lot of, spending a lot of man hours learning about this technology, even though there were red flags, because this industry giant is investing a lot in it, and it's old technology. People already had pessimism about it, but what can go wrong? The only place to go is up, because this big giant was investing a lot in it. Well, a lot can go wrong. The whole industry fell from underneath us.
I have to comment on this. This is very important. And not to interrupt, and please continue.
Please.
It pisses me off to hear, because I hear this all of the time, and it's such BS. I don't care if the dead themselves rise from their graves and tell us what we need to do. Doesn't matter to me. Or the Pope himself could call me right now and say, Dimitri, you should buy blah, blah, blah. I don't care. I'm going to look into it myself, and I'm going to make my own decision. But a lot of times people make decisions based on, well, if so-and-so is doing it, or obviously it's a good idea if Goldman Sachs is saying it. Screw Goldman Sachs. Watch, we're gonna get like blocked by Goldman Sachs.
But if enough so-and-sos are doing it, that is the opposite of an opportunity, because that's saturation point. That's where you're near a bubble. But yeah, it's funny, if you're early enough and you see somebody moving, you might shadow that movement. But once enough people make that same move, you don't want to shadow that movement anymore.
I hadn't thought about it that way. Yeah, it could be seen from both perspectives.
So check this out. So I have a friend, again, I'm not going to name any names, but I have a friend who recently bought like a couple $100 million worth of mobile homes. Parks. Mobile home parks, not mobile homes. Sorry.
Thing to say,
And
that amount of money in mobile homes, you could stack them to the moon.
not the actual, but
Like, where's
mobile home parks.
Holy crap.
You know what I mean. Uh,
That's
so
awesome.
here in Southern California, by the way. That being said, hold on. Oh man, I need to sneeze.
While you recover, I think that's a good move because I think people are starting to lead a little more active lifestyle, and I think camping is part of that.
So okay, no. Let me tell you why it was a horrible move.
Oh, we've already found out it's horrible.
I found out recently it was horrible. Another friend of mine was like, "Oh man," and I don't want to name any names. His name isn't Bob. I'm gonna say Bob, and the other guy's name isn't Larry, but I'm gonna say Larry. So
Okay.
Larry tells me Bob puts it. I already knew that he put in all this money to do it, and I wished him luck because, of course, good luck, man. I want everyone to do well. Well, apparently he's getting his ass handed to him. Why? Because, look, I mean, there are many factors, but it boils down to this. 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, nobody was doing mobile home investing. When I say mobile home investing, I mean the land under the mobile home. You can look into it.
Mobile home, not like RV, not like a. You're talking about like just the small above ground homes that are.
Yeah, they're not really that mobile. John Oliver recently did
I know what you're talking
a.
about. I know what you're
So do
talking
you know
about.
John Oliver?
Yeah.
He recently, like his last or the one before that, was about mobile homes, and it was actually very funny because I was like, "Ah, my friend just got screwed on it." I'm not laughing at him. It sucks, but he'll be fine. He had a couple $100 million to invest in it. He'll be fine. The point of the matter is, he's screwed. Why? Because he bought them at a value that was too high, and then he thought, oh, I'm just going to jack up the rents. But everyone's been jacking up the rents. Dude, I don't want to name any names, especially because this particular person, I don't want publicity to get to him because he's kind of an ass. But there was a guy who was talking about mobile home parks when I first got into real estate 10 years ago. And then people have been doing it for so long. But now everybody's saying, oh, well, people are going to have to pay rent. And so they're trying to buy everything that people pay rent on in the residential space. And of course, mobile home parks come up and people start going and buying that. But the practices of buying on mobile home parks are so unscrupulous that there's a breaking point. And he hit the breaking point, and now he's like, ay, I'm losing hundreds. I think he's losing something stupid like
I guess
$5 million a day.
the
Or
important
a month.
for that, because like you were mentioning a while ago that it seemed like a pessimistic play. Like it seemed like a pessimistic market. It's great to buy when prices are low, but
prices are high.
basically what you followed up with, people were actually optimistic about that market, and there was a bubble building. So it also really helps to know, from what I'm hearing, it also really helps to know that is your purchase actually pessimistic? Are you actually purchasing when prices are low? Are people actually pessimistic about this, or do you just think that it is because you know nothing about the industry?
Yeah. Do you guys want to have? I feel like we're hitting on the time, probably over the time that we had thought we were going to talk. Let's do last thoughts. So let's do this. I'm going to ask 2 questions of each of you, and let's try to keep it somewhat brief so that we can wrap it up. 1, would you ever run for politics? And if no, why? And 2, because I wanted to know that one from earlier. And 2, do you have any tips on risk?
No, I will not run for politics. It's one, I can't. I'm a foreigner, foreign born. My passport won't let me. And my birth certificate won't let me either.
What if you had your what if you became a citizen? Well, because you're in the process of it.
but yeah, it's not something that I find interesting. It's a lot of complexity and a lot of relationship related complexity. Um, I don't like taking the baton of something that's already complex that somebody else started. I generally like having a blank piece of paper and starting from there versus starting with somebody else's work and then trying to make my mark or trying to fix something. It's very difficult. I won't feel good about making a contribution. I won't even see my contribution. At least I don't think I'll be able to see my contribution. So, I like being able to make my mark. And it's part of being able to choose my environment. If I pick a blank piece of paper, then I can make my mark. If I pick something that's already full of scribbles, it's like, who's gonna notice what I did?
That's
Right?
true.
Um,
What's your tip
for managing
for
risk?
Yeah.
A lot of it has to do with introspection, honestly. What actually is risky? Because a lot of the things that that I would do that people feel are risky are actually not. It's just that I figured out how to navigate that space. Um, I mean, as I was saying, with my first with my first experience in investing almost 10 years ago, um, the decisions I made felt risky to anybody coming into it. And even now, I see people buying properties in places that they want to own or that they want to live in. I would want to live here, so most likely everybody else would like to live here, but that's not the case. You're putting yourself into you
a
won't
very
know what
self-centered way
everybody
of
else
thinking?
wants, right? You can't. It feels less risky when you're buying something that you want, but unless you actually look at the data, you won't really know. So your perception of risk is bullshit. Everything you know about risk, everything you feel about risk, everything you fear, try to forget it. And it's really, really hard because the only thing that can tell you whether or not it actually really is risky is the data surrounding it. And surrounding yourself with the people who would tell you what you don't know. Because, like relationships are data. The more relationships you have with the right people who could tell you what you don't know, who could tell you you're a stupid idiot for doing something like that because you didn't know this piece of data, is incredibly valuable. So
Totally.
make friends and just pull that stick out of your ass. Like get over yourself because everything that everything that I think I know or everything that I felt is risky is almost always detrimental to any deal. And if I fuck up, it's most likely, in an investment, it's probably because my ego came in or, I, I, I didn't know what I didn't know, or I was. It's most likely related to me if an investment messes up.
Yeah, I can see it. Hunter, shoot.
All right, on the politics tip, I'm mixed on that one. I will say no and yes, which is the perfect political answer. I'm on the fence already. So the yes would be the no would actually the no first. The no is easy. I don't like being put under a microscope. I don't like everybody pointing fingers and picking at me and trying to pull me apart and trick me and catch me and things and like try to make this thing I said out of context mean this thing for their agenda. And I just don't like that side of it at all. What I would say yes to is twofold. One, because in politics, you are in a position where when you make decisions, you can affect positively or negatively, of course, but more people in one stroke. Like today, perfect example, governor signed a bill. That little signature, he's helping thousands of people. like just with the signature. And I really liked the fact that whenever he came up to a group of people that were supporting a bill that he was there to sign, because today was an important day of signing some bills into law. There was about 5 of them, and with each group he would address the representative and the senator first and say, appreciate your guys' effort on this bill. What is this bill achieving that we couldn't achieve beforehand? Like, how is this helping Arkansas? And he would let them basically summarize what the old law used to be, or where there was no law, and how this is going to help. And if he thought that that was a good thing and that this is going to help and everybody's behind it, cool, done, sweet. And I really like the ability to just critically think at a high level and make some responsible, smart decisions, rather than having to be on the side of it where you're doing months and months and months of research and just digging through all these things, coming up with all these different things to consider. And like Brian was talking about, boiling it down and whittling it and getting it sculpted into this eloquent thing that we can call a bill, and it makes some sense and some change. That is tedious to me. That stuff, I would love to, get bills passed that help the community, but the side of it I've been on so far is a really tedious side of it. The petitioning and the balloting and all this, very tedious.
You kind of have the advantage. All the millennials are already talking about you.
Exactly.
Love Hunter.
And plus, my stepdad, he was, a representative for 14 years. So I was the youngest age in Mississippi. I was ambassadorized by our lieutenant governor at age 9. Like, I've had a little history in politics. I get along well with people, and I care about the community I live in. So on that side of things, I would say maybe, yeah, potentially. But man, it looks like a soap opera that I want nothing to do with from a distance. So on that side, I would say
you're
no.
You're already in it. You're practically born into it. You already know how to navigate it.
Sure.
What feels completely risky to me is just, you could actually see where the path in that space.
True. I guess that's why I'm on the fence, and that's where I will continue to nimbly stay.
Very nimble of you. What's the tip?
So the tip on the investment side of things, I would say, kind of what I was talking about earlier, knowledge and control is kryptonite when it comes to risk. I earlier today was discussing Ronald Reagan, actually with the governor, because he had a picture with him, and he was talking about how so many, millennials are not able to identify that president when they come into the office. Like, it was this. That's Ronald Reagan. But he was known for saying trust but verify. And when it comes to, it's what we think we know that we're actually wrong about, a lot of times trust but verify can eliminate that. And I think that's a really good tip is basically, trust but verify, get as much knowledge and control over the thing as you can have, and anywhere there's fear, eliminate it, whatever that takes, besides walking away. Because a lot of times that's what I think gets people from taking risks is that fear factor, that it's uncomfortable. And when they feel that fear, instead of eliminating it with knowledge or information, they run. And I feel like if that was one tip that I could give for investing, it's don't invest in anything that you're fearful about. If you're fearful about it, and you're fearful about everything, and you can't think of anything you're not fearful about, what are you least fearful about? And then identify those fears. What are those specific fears? Why are you afraid of that? Who knows about that? Who can change that? Who can affect that? Who controls that? Get to know those people. Get to know that information. Get to know that playing field. And a lot of that fear is going to go away, and you can pretty much eliminate all of it. I mean, there's no player that goes out on the game and doesn't have a fear of losing. It's going to be there to some degree, but when they've prepared and they've trained and they feel they've trained harder than anyone else and longer than anyone else, they're a lot more confident than they are fearful. And I would dare say there's probably some players that step onto the field, younger players, that are zero fear just because they're so confident in themselves, even though there still is potential risk. And that's kind of what this whole conversation has been about. Risk is everywhere. There's no way to avoid it, but your perception of it depends on you, what you know, and who you know, and how you use that information. So
That's true. Okay, I'm gonna give mine. Here's my 2 cents. So, if you're thinking about risk, well, before I talk about risk, I'll answer the politics question. I shouldn't run for politics, but maybe in the future I will. My wife will kill me if I do, but that's besides the point. I don't think I will. And really, it's because of the same reason. Like, I would like to make the changes, but I feel like I can make the changes from the position that I'm sitting in today better than I can sitting in a seat where everyone's politics is such a dirty world nowadays. Everybody's looking at everyone and they're looking at one side of the story and they're saying, "Oh, well, you're so bad because of this, this, this," but they're not mentioning any of the good things. And I mean, I haven't torn apart my life and I feel like I'm a pretty good person, but let's be honest. Like, I feel like a few things, you know. Well, I'm doing a podcast drinking scotch. Like, and be like, "Oh, that guy's an alcoholic." No, I'm not. Don't worry about it. The point of the matter is, um, yeah, I don't want to be, under the scrutinizing eye. I like my privacy. That's why I don't really do social media too much. Uh, but the point of the matter is, politics, I prefer to stay on the side of politics that I'm at. I can help many different politicians with my expertise much better than I could if I was, in opposition with them. And if I, was a Republican or a Democrat and I was saying, "Oh, well, we should care about the people." And then they're saying, "Well, screw you and your people." It seems like a bitter fight that I don't necessarily want to fight. Though that might change. In terms of risk, my advice on risk, and there's many places that I could go on this, and a lot of people ask me this all the time, actually. Um, and at the end of the day, if I had to really put my finger on it, I would say it's a matter of you live this one life, and a lot of things in this life seem extremely important, but none of those things are important. None of them. In the sense that I'm a believer in evolution, so I'll talk about it. 300 million years of evolution for nothing, because at some point it will all cease to exist. And we have this little blip in history that we live, and we have some impact that we can make on this society. But at some point, even that impact won't make any difference. It doesn't matter. And when you accept that it doesn't matter, and you realize, at least in my opinion, you realize that you have to make your own meaning in life. That's when you can make the biggest meaning because you're not scared. Fear stops people from doing the things that they know need to be done. It sucks. I don't want to go to the gym because, well, I fear that people are going to laugh at me because I can't do the things that Arnold Schwarzenegger can do. Or I'm not going to invest in something because I'm fearing that things could go bad. Yeah, things could go bad. That's when you fall back on your structure. You want to be smart about it. You don't want to just throw money around. That's stupid. That's not being smart. But at the end of the day, fear is what prevents us from achieving our maximum potential. So my biggest advice in life about risk is don't be afraid, don't fear taking action. Because at the end of the day, it won't matter anyways. It really won't. And I'll drink to that.
Oh man.
All right, gentlemen.
Here's the scotch, here's the money, and here's the scotch money in the bank.
Scotch money. Cheers.
Oh, he did it right. Brian did it right. We're slacking.
All right. Thanks everybody for tuning in. This was Scotch Money. Scotch Money. Say it with me, gentlemen. 3, 2, 1. Scotch Money. All right. I appreciate everybody for listening, and we're going to be doing another one. So tune on in next time. Bye.